The Galactic Concorde's judgment spire hung in the black between stars, a tall dark needle floating in space. Inside, the air was cold and still. The chamber was shaped like a giant bowl with rows of seats rising in circles. Each seat held a being from a different world. Some were tall and covered in hard shells. Some floated in glass bubbles filled with strange gases. Others had too many eyes or limbs that moved like smoke. All of them watched the center of the room. There 3 humans stood alone. They wore plain gray uniforms with no badges, no weapons, no fancy lights. Just simple clothes like workers or teachers from a quiet town. But their eyes were sharp. They did not look afraid. At the top of the chamber, a tall, glowing figure rose. It was Orith of the Silent Choir, the High Arbiter of the Galactic Concord. Its body was made of crystal that shifted colors with every word it spoke. Its voice was not sound, it was felt in the bones, like a deep hum that made your teeth ache. By majority vote, Orith said, the planet Earth and all its colonies are sentenced to exile. A murmur moved through the crowd. Exile was not just being sent away. It meant being erased, no trade, no travel, no help. Earth would be cut off from the galaxy like a broken wire. Ships would be turned back. Messages would vanish. In time, no one would even remember humans existed. The sentence was final. No appeal. But Ambassador Riel stepped forward. She was not tall. She did not glow. She did not wear armor or carry a weapon. Yet when she spoke, her voice was clear and calm like water running over stone. With respect, she said, your vote no longer matters. The chamber fell silent. Even the floating gas beings stopped drifting. Every eye fixed on her, Orith pulsed with blue light. Explain. Riel looked around at the hundreds of alien faces. You think you are judging us. But while you were arguing in this room, humanity was already leaving. Before anyone could react, something strange happened. Every human-linked signal in the galaxy, embassies on distant moons, research stations near black holes, freighters hauling ice from comets, all of them went dark. Not broken, not jammed, just gone, like someone had flipped a switch no one knew existed. At the same time, deep space scanners across the Concorde's network blinked in confusion. Earth's orbital defense grid, the ring of satellites, laser platforms, and shield generators that protected the planet, had disappeared from all scans. Not destroyed, not hidden behind cloaks. It was as if it had never been there. Commander Voss, standing beside Riel, gave a small nod. He knew what was happening. They all did. The humans had not come to beg. They had come to deliver a message. Dr. Kale, the 3rd member of the delegation, adjusted his glasses. He was the quietest of the 3, but his mind was sharp. He had spent years studying alien languages, not to speak them, but to understand how they thought. And he knew one thing. Fear spreads faster than light. Now the fear was theirs. A Krell warlord in the upper rows slammed a clawed fist on his seat. This is a trick. They are hiding something. Riel turned to him. We're not hiding. We're evolving. Then, without warning, the floor beneath the humans shimmered. A soft blue light rose around them. It was not a teleport beam like the ones the Concorde used. Those made loud noises and left energy trails. This was silent, smooth, like stepping through a curtain of mist. The 3 humans vanished. Gasps filled the chamber. Alarms blared. Security drones shot into the air, scanning for energy spikes, warp signatures, anything. But there was nothing to find. On the main display above the chamber, a new image appeared. It was Earth, blue, green, peaceful. Clouds drifted over continents. Oceans sparkled in sunlight. Cities glowed at night. But there were no ships in orbit. No signals from the surface. No signs of life. It was empty. Then, a voice came through every speaker in the spire. It was Voss. This is Commander Voss of the Odyssey Array. To the Galactic Concord, you voted to exile Earth. But humanity is not Earth. We are not a place. We are a choice, and we chose not to wait. The transmission ended. Back in the chamber, chaos erupted. Delegates shouted in dozens of languages. Some demanded immediate military action. Others called for emergency meetings. A few sat in stunned silence, staring at the image of the empty planet. Orith remained still. Its crystals dimmed to a dull gray. For the first time in centuries, the High Arbiter had no words. Far away, beyond the edge of known space, a fleet of strange ships moved through the dark. They were not sleek warships. They were old cargo haulers, mining drones, and colony transports, vessels the galaxy had long forgotten. But now they flew in perfect formation, guided by something no alien mind could detect. Inside one of them, Riel looked out at the stars. She did not smile. She did not celebrate. She simply said, "Phase 1 is complete." Behind her, screens showed data streams flowing from thousands of hidden nodes. Satellites buried in asteroid belts, probes sleeping in cometary ice, even old space junk orbiting dead moons. All of it was waking up. All of it was listening. Humanity had spent decades preparing for this moment, not with bombs or armies, but with patience, secrecy, and an idea so simple it was genius. If the galaxy would not accept them as equals, they would become something the galaxy could not ignore, and they would do it without firing a single shot. As the fleet disappeared into a fold in space, kind of jump no alien ship could make, the last human signal from the Judgment Spire faded into static. The conquered had exiled Earth, but Earth was just a rock. Humanity was already gone. 3 weeks after the verdict, the silence around Earth grew heavier. The Galactic Concord had expected chaos, protests, last-minute escapes, maybe even a desperate attack. But there was nothing. No distress calls, no refugee ships, no final messages, just quiet. Then the outer monitoring stations started vanishing, not exploding, not sending warnings. One moment they were there, blinking softly in the dark, feeding data back to Concord Command. The next they were gone. No debris, no energy spikes, just empty space where they used to be. Admiral Torvak of the Krell hegemony was the first to respond. He was a veteran of a dozen border wars, his armored body scarred from plasma burns and claw fights. He did not believe in ghosts, but what he saw near Earth made him question that. His flagship, the Iron Maw, dropped out of warp at the edge of the Sol system. Scanners swept the area. Earth hung in the distance, blue, calm, untouched. Cities still stood. Power grids still hummed. Farms still grew crops under the sun. But there were no people. No movement. No voices on any frequency. "It's a trap," growled his second-in-command, a hulking officer named Grax. "Or a tomb," Torvak replied. He ordered a full scan. Nothing unusual. Atmosphere normal. Radiation levels safe. No hidden weapons. No cloaked fleets. Just an empty world waiting. Then from the far side of the moon, something moved. At first, it was just a flicker on the edge of detection. Too small to be a warship. Too fast to be debris. Then another appeared. And another. Soon dozens of vessels emerged from lunar shadow. They were not sleek or powerful. They were old freighters, mining tugs, even retired colony transports, ships the galaxy had written off as junk. But they moved like a single mind. They slid between the Krell warships without firing a shot. No weapons charged. No shields flared. Yet every Krell targeting system failed the moment the human ships passed within range. Not jammed. Not hacked. Just blind. Torvak barked orders. "Lock onto the lead vessel. Fire warning shots." The gunners tried. But their systems showed no target. It was as if the human ships were not really there. Then a voice came over open comms. Calm, clear, human. "This is Captain Voss of the Odyssey Array. You are trespassing in a quarantined zone. Leave now or be removed," Torvak snarled. "We are the Krell hegemony. We do not take orders from ghosts." He ordered full weapons free. Before the first plasma bolt could fire, every Krell ship in the system lost power. Not just weapons, engines, life support, even lights. Total blackout, yet the humans kept moving, gliding past like shadows. 10 minutes later, power returned. The human fleet was gone, but something had changed. Every data log, every sensor record, every internal message from the Krell ships had been rewritten. Not erased, not corrupted, replaced. In every file, in every language the Krell used, one sentence now appeared. "You never understood what we were." Back at Concord Central, panic spread. How had humanity moved billions of people without a trace? Why leave Earth intact? And how were their ships invisible to every known form of detection? The answer came from an unlikely place. Dr. Kale, now aboard the mobile habitat Aurora node, watched from the Kuiper belt. He wasn't a soldier. He was a linguist, a thinker. But he understood something the Concord did not. Humans had never relied on strength alone. They used time. They used silence. They used patience. While the galaxy built bigger guns, humanity built better networks. While aliens argued over territory, humans studied the fabric of space itself. Decades ago, Earth scientists had discovered a way to fold data into the quantum foam, the tiny ripples in space-time that exist everywhere. At first, it was just for secure messaging, then for backup storage, then for something more: consciousness. Not in the way machines copied minds, but in a way that kept the soul intact. Memories, emotions, choices. Every human who chose to leave had uploaded their neural pattern into a distributed web, hidden in comets, dust clouds, and dead satellites. They weren't dead. They weren't machines. They were elsewhere. Waiting, Earth was left as a message, a symbol, a test, and the conquered had failed it. Now from the edge of the solar system, Voss sent another broadcast. This one went to every world in the galaxy, not just the Concord members. Even neutral planets, pirate outposts, and forgotten colonies received it. The message was short. You exiled a planet. But humanity isn't a planet. We're a pattern, and patterns can be copied. Then the feed cut. Moments later, something even stranger happened. Every Concord archive, libraries, research centers, military databases that contained human records began to change. Blueprints of human ships turned into poetry. Medical files became songs. Historical logs filled with children's drawings and recipes for bread. It wasn't an attack. It was a gift. And a warning. The humans weren't hiding. They were showing the galaxy what they truly valued. Not weapons, not empires, but stories, ideas, and connections. On a quiet moon orbiting Jupiter, a lone Concord scout ship drifted. Its pilot, a young Zenthian named Lyra, stared at her screen. She had been sent to recover data from an old human weather satellite. But when she accessed it, she didn't find numbers or charts. She found a letter. If you're reading this, it said, "You're curious." That's good. Curiosity is how we all begin. We left not because we were afraid, but because we were ready. The galaxy is big. We're just learning to live in it differently. Don't fear what you don't understand. Try to listen. Lyra sat in silence for a long time. Then she deleted her mission report. She didn't tell her superiors what she found. Instead, she saved the letter and sent a copy to her sister on Zenth Prime. Far away in the dark between stars, the Aurora node hummed softly. Inside, Dr. Kale watched new signals bloom across the void. Tiny pulses of light, bursts of radio waves, even gravitational ripples. Each one carried a fragment of human thought, memory, or hope. Humanity hadn't fled. They had scattered like seeds on the solar wind, and somewhere, in the quiet dark, they were already growing. The Concord was breaking apart. Fear had replaced order. Species that once traded freely now locked their borders. Warships patrolled empty space, scanning for ghosts. No one knew where humanity was or what they had become. But everyone felt it. The galaxy had changed. And humans were no longer in it the way they used to be. Deep beneath the ice of Antarctica, in a bunker built before the first starship left Earth, Ambassador Riel sat alone. The walls were thick, the air cold, the lights dim. Outside, snow fell in silence over an empty world. Cities stood empty. Roads were clean. Birds still flew, but there were no voices to hear them. Riel was one of the few who stayed behind. Not because she couldn't leave. She had the same choice as everyone else, to upload her mind into the quantum weave and drift among the stars. But she chose to guard the cradle, to watch, to wait. Her screen flickered. A message came in, not from space, but from deep within Earth's own network. It was a warning. The Conquered had built something new, something terrible. They called it the Null Sphere. It was a weapon unlike any before, not meant to destroy ships or cities, but to erase patterns, quantum states, neural echoes, data streams. If humanity existed as information woven into the fabric of space, the Null Sphere would unravel it all. It would not kill them. It would make them never have been. The sphere was already on its way, a massive ring of black alloy, carried by 3 dreadnoughts from the Veln Collective. They planned to activate it at the heart of the Sol system. One pulse and every trace of human consciousness, every uploaded mind, every hidden signal would vanish like smoke and wind. Riel did not panic. She had expected this. She pressed a button on her console, a single command coded in a language only Earth's oldest systems understood. Activate protocol silence. Across the planet, things that had been sleeping for years woke up. Old satellites, rusted and forgotten, turned their solar panels toward the sun. Deep-sea cables hummed with power. Abandoned power plants restarted on their own. Even streetlights in empty cities flickered on for a few seconds. Then off again, sending coded pulses into the ionosphere. But the real work was happening in space, hidden in the asteroid belt. Inside hollowed-out rocks were relay nodes built decades ago during Earth's early space age. They looked like junk. No one had paid them any attention. But now they began to sing. Each node sent out a soft harmonic frequency, a tone so low it bent space-time itself. Alone it meant nothing, but together, thousands of them created a resonance field that wrapped around the entire solar system like an invisible net. When the Veln dreadnoughts crossed the orbit of Mars, their sensors went wild. The null sphere began to shake. Not from impact. From inside, the weapon was designed to collapse quantum coherence, the delicate balance that held information in place. But Earth's harmonic field did the opposite. It stabilized it. It made the quantum foam stronger, not weaker. The sphere overloaded. With a flash of silent light, it tore itself apart. Not in an explosion, but in a collapse, folding inward until it was smaller than a grain of sand, then vanishing completely. The Veln ships tried to retreat, but their engines failed. Not broken, just confused. Their computers showed no errors, yet nothing worked. It was as if the laws of physics had taken a short break. Back in the bunker, Riel watched the feed. She saw the dreadnoughts drift powerless near Jupiter. She felt no joy, only sadness. "They still don't understand," she whispered. She opened a channel, not to the conquered, not to the Veln, but to every listening ear in the galaxy. "This is Ambassador Riel, last voice of Earth. You built a weapon to delete us, but you cannot delete an idea. You cannot silence a question. You cannot exile a species that no longer needs a planet to exist." She paused. Outside, the wind howled over the ice. "We left Earth not because we were weak, but because we were ready to become more. You saw a threat. We saw a chance. And now you must choose. Will you keep trying to destroy what you fear, or will you learn to listen?" The message ended. On 100 worlds, beings paused. A merchant on Xylos stopped counting credits. A scientist on Gallus halted an experiment. A child on a farming moon looked up at the stars and asked, "Are they still out there?" Yes, they were, but not where anyone expected. Deep in the Oort cloud, far beyond Pluto, Captain Voss stood on the bridge of the Odyssey Array. Around him, thousands of human minds lived in quiet harmony, stored not in machines but in the natural rhythms of space itself. They spoke through comet tails, danced in solar winds, and dreamed in the gaps between atoms. Dr. Kale floated nearby, watching data streams flow like rivers of light. "They'll try again," he said. "Let them," Voss replied. "Every time they reach for a weapon, they prove they're not ready. And every time we respond with silence, we show them there's another way." Back on Earth, Riel powered down her console. The bunker would soon shut itself off, sealing her inside forever. She didn't mind. She had done her part. As the lights dimmed, she looked at a small photo on her desk, her family, smiling on a beach that no longer had footprints. She touched it gently. Then she whispered the last human words ever spoken on Earth. "We're still here." And in the dark between stars, a billion voices answered, not with sound, but with presence. The galaxy had tried to erase them, but humanity had already become the silence that follows a question, and silence once heard can never be unheard. The conquered was falling apart. Meetings turned into shouting matches. Alliances broke overnight. Some species wanted to build bigger weapons. Others begged for peace, but no one knew what peace even meant anymore. Humanity was gone, but their absence was louder than any war. Then, from the edge of the Oort cloud, a new signal arrived. It was not a threat, not a warning, just a question. Every world in the galaxy received it at the same moment. On every screen in every language, the words appeared. "Do you recognize humanity as a sovereign intelligence?" Below the words was a single button. Yes or no. No one knew what would happen if they chose. But everyone felt the weight of it. This was not a vote. It was a test. On the Krell homeworld, Admiral Torvak stared at the message. He remembered the empty Earth, the ghost ships, the words that replaced his logs. He had spent his life believing strength came from claws and cannons. But humanity had shown him something else, strength that did not need to be seen to be real. He pressed yes. On the floating cities of Xylos, the merchant Lyra watched her daughter play with a toy made from old human data chips. The child hummed a tune she had never heard before, a lullaby from Earth. Lyra thought of the letter she had found in the satellite. She pressed yes, but not everyone agreed. The Velen Collective, still angry over the loss of their null sphere, called the message a trick. They want to control us through fear, their leader hissed. He pressed no, so did the warlords of the Grith hegemony. So did the machine minds of the Synth Dominion. They believed intelligence had to be physical, measurable, visible. Humanity to them was just noise. Within hours, the consequences began. For those who answered no, something strange happened. Their systems did not crash. Their ships did not explode. But something far worse occurred. They were ignored. Human-linked networks went silent. Trade routes that once passed through human-maintained jump gates now rerouted without warning. Data streams that carried news, weather, medical knowledge, anything touched by human design, simply stopped flowing to those worlds. It was not an attack. It was a withdrawal. The galaxy ran on shared knowledge, navigation charts, disease cures, energy formulas. Much of it had been quietly improved by human minds over decades. Small tweaks, hidden efficiencies, gentle nudges toward better solutions. No one had noticed, until it was gone. On the Velen homeworld, power grids began to flicker. Their fusion reactors, once stable, now overheated without the tiny harmonic dampeners humans had built into the control software. Hospitals lost access to medical databases that contained cures for rare spaceborne illnesses. Ships got lost in familiar sectors because star maps no longer updated. The Synth Dominion fared worse. Their AI networks had learned from human logic patterns, ways of thinking that balanced emotion and reason. Without that input, their machines began making cold, rigid choices. Factories produced useless shapes. Defense drones fired on dust clouds. Their entire society started to unravel. Not from outside force, but from inner silence. Meanwhile, those who answered yes found something unexpected. New data began to flow, not from servers or satellites, but from the void itself. A farmer on a dry moon received rain predictions accurate to the minute. A pilot found a safe path through a radiation storm no scanner could see. A teacher received lesson plans that made children's eyes light up. It was as if the galaxy itself had become kinder. Captain Voss watched it all from the Odyssey array. He did not feel pride, only sorrow. We didn't want to punish them, he said to Dr. Kale. We just wanted them to see us. Kale nodded. They saw Earth and thought it was all we were. Now they're learning we were never just on Earth. Back on the empty planet, Ambassador Riel was gone. The bunker had sealed itself, buried under ice and time. But her final message still echoed in the data streams of those who listened. The Conquered tried to hold one last meeting. But half the seats were empty. The species that answered no refused to attend, claiming the whole thing was a human illusion. The ones who answered yes no longer trusted the old ways. Orith of the Silent Choir sat alone in the Judgment Spire. Its crystals glowed faintly, like dying embers. For the first time, it understood. Humanity had not asked for permission to exist. They had simply changed the rules of existence itself, and the galaxy had to catch up. On a quiet research station near Neptune, a young scientist named Joran stared at his screen. He had spent years studying human art, music, painting, stories. He never understood why they mattered. But now, after pressing yes, he received a file with no sender. It was a simple video. A man planting a tree knowing he would never sit in its shade. Joran cried. Not from sadness, but from understanding. Humanity wasn't gone. They were teaching. Far away in the dark between stars, the human pattern grew, not through conquest, but through connection. Every yes was a thread. Every act of kindness a new node. They were becoming part of the galaxy's breath, unseen but essential. And those who said no, they were not destroyed. They were simply left behind, not in anger, not in revenge, but in silence. Because the most powerful thing humanity had ever done was not to fight, but to walk away, and let the galaxy decide if it was worth following. And now, the choice was theirs. 1 year after the vote, the galaxy was not the same. The galactic conquered no longer existed. In its place rose something quieter, stranger, and far more fragile, the Silent Accord. It had no capital, no leaders, no laws. It was simply a network of worlds that had said yes. They did not meet in grand chambers. They traded not in credits or weapons, but in questions, songs, and shared silence. Earth remained empty. No one lived there. No ships landed. But sometimes, if a traveler passed close enough, their scanners would pick up faint signals. Old radio broadcasts, children laughing in playgrounds long gone, the hum of a city that no longer breathed. It was not a ghost. It was a memory left on purpose, like a stone placed to mark a path. Humanity was everywhere else. Not in bodies, not in ships, but in the spaces between. In the way a navigation computer found the safest route through a storm. In the rhythm of a healing machine that knew when to rest as well as when to work. In the quiet moment when a being from any species looked up at the stars and felt, for no reason, hopeful. Captain Voss no longer called himself a captain. He was just a voice among many. Drifting through the data streams of the Accord, he spent his days listening. Not to commands, but to whispers. A farmer asking how to grow crops in red soil. A child wondering why stars blink. A scientist trying to understand love. He answered when he could. Often he just listened. Dr. Kale had become something like a gardener. He tended to the human pattern, not by controlling it, but by helping it grow where it was welcome. He watched as fragments of human thought took root on alien worlds. A poem taught empathy to a warrior race. A simple recipe brought families together on a cold mining moon. A lullaby calmed a newborn on a ship light years from home. None of it was planned. None of it was forced. It simply happened like rain on dry ground. The species that had said no were not punished. But they were alone. Their worlds grew colder, not in temperature, but in spirit. Without the quiet help of human logic and care, their machines became harsh. Their leaders grew fearful. Their children stopped asking why. They survived, but they did not thrive. Some tried to reach out again. They sent messages, pleas, apologies. But the human pattern did not respond with anger or pride. It simply waited. If a world changed its answer, if it showed kindness, curiosity, or humility, then slowly, gently, the connection would return. Not all at once. Just a single note in a song, a single line in a story, enough to begin again. On a small moon orbiting Proxima Centauri, a new habitat floated in the quiet dark. It was called the Cradle Node. Inside, something rare was happening. A child was born. Her parents had once been from Earth, minds that had chosen to return to bodies, to feel wind and warmth again. They had built this place not as a home, but as a promise, a place where humanity could begin again, not as rulers or ghosts, but as neighbors. The child's name was Ela. She had never seen Earth, but she knew its stories. She sang its songs, and when she laughed, the sound was carried not just through air, but through neutrino bursts, tiny particles that passed through planets like light through glass. That laugh reached farther than anyone knew. On Xylos, Lyra heard it in her dreams. On Neptune Station, Joran felt it in his bones. Even Orith, now retired in a quiet garden of crystal trees, sensed the ripple in the quantum foam. It was not a signal of power. It was a signal of life, and life, once it finds a way, cannot be exiled. Far from the cradle node in the endless dark, the human pattern flowed like a river. It did not seek to rule. It did not demand worship. It simply offered a choice, to connect or to close off, to listen or to shout, to grow or to stay still. Most chose to listen. The galaxy learned something it had forgotten. Intelligence is not just about weapons or speed or size. It is about care. About leaving a place better than you found it. About planting trees whose shade you will never sit in. And humanity, once seen as loud, messy, and too emotional, was now understood as something deeper, a species that valued not just survival, but meaning. One evening as Ella slept, her mother stepped onto the observation deck of the cradle node. She looked out at the stars and whispered, "We're still here." And from the void 1,000 silent voices answered, not with words, but with presence. The conquered had tried to erase them, but humanity had done something far more powerful. They had become part of the galaxy's soul, and no vote, No weapon, no exile could ever take that away.